So I keep getting an alert about recording.
Yeah,
Is that
sorry about that. I'm not sure why it stopped there, but I hit record again.
okay? Yeah. And yeah, it's been great. It's been a and they have a very different schedule too. They put Culpability into production pretty quickly,
Mm.
and they are they just seem to be a kind of dream place to work with. At least that's my experience.
You mentioned AI, and the intrusion is very much a part of this book. Um, I would love to know your thoughts on, is it getting better or worse? And then overlaid in that question is, you and I have seen fake culpabilities out there
Yes.
where they even spell your name wrong and
Yeah.
yet give the reader the whole book. Can you talk a little bit about that, Bruce?
Yeah. In fact, I think you might have one of them behind you there, a picture of it. Is
Yep.
that right? Yeah.
Yep. So this is the
Um,
real one over here with Oprah's
yeah.
circle, and then the other one has a blurb about the novel. You can see its culpability. I'm sorry, I cut off. I didn't want to offend Bruce by having his name
Oh, I
misspelled.
don't care. You're not going to offend me. Yeah. Yeah, but it's really weird. There's a whole industry, and this has happened to other authors I know, for novels that sell a lot. They're where they basically just pirate the thing and produce an on-demand paperback with, the I think in certain cases that may be one where the whole text is accurate and they've just sucked it into the in between kind of faked up covers, and it, quality control is very, very low. But it's just for somebody to make a buck off an author's work. And then there's some other ones that are circulating that are like 80 pages long, these weird digests of the book as paperbacks. So I think this is just that it almost has nothing to do with AI. It's just like print on demand, copyright infringement. It's and then of course there's
Nothing you
the
can
AI
do.
generated slop. Yeah, yeah. I tell my publishers and they roll their eyes and say, yeah, this is common now. Just like you can go on YouTube and find a pirated audiobook of my novel, of all my novels. You can just search for the novels and you'll be able to just listen to the audiobook for free. It's horrible, but it is what it is.
So speak to that a little bit, Bruce. What can an author do about their intellectual property in a world where I'm referencing AI, but it's more where intellectual property isn't honored?
Yeah. Well, there's a few things. One is, the Anthropic copyright settlement. I have four titles that were scraped up into that big database that trained large language models. So I'm part of a lawsuit. I'll get, you know, $3,000, $4,000 per book or something like that when those disbursements happen. Um, and then, I guess my publisher could get a lawyer and try to sue those pop-up stores on Amazon. But, Amazon Marketplace, if I want to sell, this notebook in front of me right now, I could put it on Amazon Marketplace under a fake business name that only exists for 10 days, sell the notebook and close the business. And, it's that it is it's like a bazaar for a digital bazaar. So you can't really control things. So that, and I don't worry about it as much simply because my day job, I probably talked to you all about this last time. So I'm an English professor. I teach medieval literature. That's really what I do. That's my career. And the publishing thing it's only since this book came out that it really has felt like a whole different second career that is just as demanding. Um, but up until now, I haven't really worried about that much because it doesn't affect me personally. But I do worry about it for the industry as a whole, and I really worry about AI generated slop and the large percentage of books now that are just being created by slop and posted on Amazon. And the New York Times had an interview with I won't call it a writer, but a romance prompter, I guess you could call her, a few months ago, who churns out like 70 books a year. And, with maybe more than that, with a large language model and just puts them between self-published covers and posts them on Amazon. That's just becoming more and more common.
So what is you obviously have a concern, and what might that be for inspired creative writers that don't want to put out slop? How do you
Yeah,
encourage?
I guess it's just that a larger and larger proportion of books that just get posted because they're independently published or that go to agents anymore are being produced with AI. We're seeing stories almost every day. There was one about this big literary prize where the finalists were published in Granta magazine, a really well-respected literary journal. The one that won was definitely generated by AI. It may be that two or three of them, the finalists, were also generated by AI. So there's now this kind of huge issue of quality control, and the loss of a kind of artistic integrity. So on the one hand, people are always going to be involved. Humans are always going to be involved in storytelling. So I don't really know if my worry is for the future of the survival of literature. It's more about this particular moment in the publishing industry that feels just like full of junk. And I think it could be hard for editors, agents, readers to sort through the slop and find things that they like and things that are meaningful to them. Even in the journal, I edit an academic journal, um, a literary theory journal, very esoteric. Where we publish, I just accepted an essay or just published an essay last year called Franz Kafka and the Asbestos Factory, right? Which is about his work and how it was in, influenced by this asbestos factory that he worked in for a while. And so it's not best-selling topics, but I'm getting all kinds of AI slop submissions. I probably get 50 submissions a month, and at least six or seven of them now are clearly they're even formatted similarly, and
Wow.
you just kind of feel it, like just like straight download. So I don't know. I find it all kind of depressing.
On a more positive note, in our interaction back and forth, Bruce, you referenced the agent-author relationship and wanted to riff a little
Yes.
bit about that. Uh, share a little bit of some of your thoughts there.
Yeah. So this novel, as I probably told you, I'm sure we talked about this. I got a new agent for this novel. I had a beloved agent for many years, Helen Heller in Canada, and she's great. We're still friends, but things weren't gelling between her and me and my editor at Riverhead, and I was in this kind of dark place where my editor hadn't wanted to pursue any of the proposals that I gave her since The Displacements, my last novel, and my agent was encouraging me to do something else. Maybe we start working with somebody else, sort of start over. I didn't want to start over. So I basically just I stopped communicating with both of them for about a year. And that's when I went deep and wrote Culpability. And when I came back out, I just decided I needed a fresh start with a different agent and maybe a different editor, depending on what happened. Um, so I parted ways in a very friendly way and she understood. He was like, I almost felt like this was probably coming. We're still in communication about things with my pastime, so it's all good. But that is my one bit of advice to people, and I've had many other writer friends agonize about this: is that it is okay to this is a business relationship, and you might get very very close on a personal level, as I was with my agent. But I even so, I needed a different advocate. And so I spent a few months querying and asking author friends about their agents, getting some references. Got a ton of rejections from agents that I solicited and sent material to from Culpability. So even people with four novels under their belts from big publishers, it'd be really hard to break. It's like starting. It really was like starting over. And then I just out of the blue, one of the agents that I'd queried just on a lark, I swear to God, like all the agents that I queried with references from other writers who I thought, oh, I might have a good chance of landing this agent, all of them said no. And then the one really big one that I blind queried just for the hell of it, Ellen Levine at Trident. She emailed me while I was on an airplane one day, going to visit my son, and said she wanted to represent me. And it felt like the first time I ever got an agent. It really was,
Wow.
in my mid 50s, but like blushing because I was so thrilled. And she's like Marilyn Robinson's agent. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And uh, she's in her mid 80s, and I don't know. It was just a beautiful match. And she took me through several rounds of submissions with the novel, and we ended up getting a lot of objections. But then finally, and as she kept telling me, it only takes one. It only takes one. And that is another piece of advice that I'd give to people. It only takes one. And it was painful after publishing four novels and going through these rounds of rejection again. I was like, oh, this feels, you know, I remember this feeling. And then finally it was Spiegel and Grau, and I was like, okay, do we want to go with this startup? This new old imprint. But I was convinced, and yeah, it really worked out.
Wow, that's so encouraging and so depressing for me as I have received 5 requests to part company from authors. Oh my gosh. No,
Just since we started talking.
yeah, yeah. So thank you, Bruce, for this inspirational time we've had. Um, what you've said, though, is really important because I want to hear a little bit more about the author agent role and how do you interact when you are faced with the 12th, the 27th, whatever rejection email your agent sends to you, and you go,
Mhm.
my gosh, uh, am I the bad writer? Am I with the bad agent? Like what goes through
Yes.
you as an author?
Yeah. What goes through your head is, I suck. This is terrible. Why am I doing this? I'm a fraud. I never should have published any novels in the first place. I am that's all. Those are the things that go through your head. And in this case, Culpability was rejected by 30 editors, 30 imprints. And we were on a third round of submissions when finally we got a an acceptance. So, I went through all and then it became an Oprah's book club thing, like 7 months later. So my agent, dutifully wrote back to all the editors, just to make sure they knew, or that she wanted an abject, not apology, but just say, "Mama knows best," kind of thing. So yeah, this whole process is full of doubt. Before I published my first novel in 2014, I had been trying to write, trying to publish a novel for at least 10 years. I'd had I wrote a thriller as early as, I want to say, like 1998 or something. Didn't get an agent for it. Started over. Finally got an agent. She couldn't sell the book she she signed me on, but did talk me into writing the next book that became my first publisher. That is a pretty common story. We can't all be the writer of yesteryear, a 28-year-old influencer who publishes her debut novel and gets number one on the bestseller list. It's much more common to spend many years flogging until it happens.
Yeah, yeah. And um all these writers are eavesdropping on my conversation to you as an agent about like what role did Marilyn, I think, or your agent play in sustaining? Like, there's a level of, oh crap, another rejection that I need to send to Bruce.
Right.
What level of confidence did your agent build in you to say, no, you are a writer, damn it. And
Yeah.
no, there is that one editor out there. We haven't heard from them yet, but there is that one editor. What?
Well, she knew she knew my career and she knew my, and I'm very thick skinned. Like when I get feedback, um, being an academic, it doesn't, yes, it can kind of make my insecurity grow in general, but I want to know. I want to know what people said. I like feedback. It helps me be a better writer. Um, and when this feedback is substantive, that can be very helpful. And
Hmm.
she wouldn't lie to me. She wouldn't say, "I know we're going to find a publisher for this." There was none of that. It was, look, I have real faith in this novel, and it only takes one. We just don't know.
Hmm.
But I've seen many cases where that, 50 rejections. Then a year later, an editor has second thoughts, or an editor's assistant becomes an editor and says, "You know what? I really loved that novel that I read as an assistant. Did it ever find a publisher?" That has happened a lot of times to people I know. Don, you've probably experienced it with clients. It's just like you just you can't judge the worth of your own work
Yeah.
based on what happens in this incredibly arbitrary, luck based. It's also skill based, but I would say, once you have an agent, you are already above a high bar, right? There's like 95% of people trying to get an agent. And then once you have that agent, it's, I don't want to say it's arbitrary, but so much of it is not about having a great manuscript, being a really talented writer with an incredible premise and super polished and ready to go. It's about what a group of editors think is trending, what risks they want to take, what they ate for breakfast that morning, everything. Like it's just such a mix of stew of things. And every sector of the publishing industry is different in that way. Um, so I've really learned. I mean, my skin has gotten tougher now, even before the Oprah thing happened. That where I could I understood it. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, but I understood it, and it there's a lot of groups like this. You really have resources where you know you're good enough, and it's just a matter of finding the right moment, the right manuscript. For finding the right manuscript, as soon as your book goes out on submission, Bruce's number one rule: you are writing your next book, right? You're not thinking about it at all. You're buried in your news story, so that whatever news you get, part of you can think, well, whatever. What I'm really excited about is this new novel. That
Yeah.
is, to me, that has been the savor, and it really has helped other people I've worked with get beyond this cycle, of just self-flagellation.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's good. Bruce, did you in your writing journey, publishing journey, were you ever writing a novel where you got some feedback and said, "Oh, that's going to inform my work. I'm going to go back and tweak or whatever, work on it so that you could resubmit it to the editor with some of those changes or no?"
Well, I've had plenty of times where I've turned in my manuscript at my deadline or whatever, or when it's been picked up and I turn in the final version, and then I get a ton of edit notes and I do huge revision. Is that what you mean? Or are you more thinking,
Yeah, I mean, what you just described seems to be rarer these days than, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago when editors really did heavy duty, editing work. I was thinking more of your agent submits it, you get some feedback about
oh, I
the
see what you mean.
manuscript, and then you go, okay, well, let me go spend 3 months taking that and processing it, and I'm going to filter it through. And okay, I've got a new draft. Would you take a look at it?
Right. That has not happened to me. Or mostly because of the timing of my submission. So,
Yeah.
um, because my first book got got a fair number of rejections, but it got picked up pretty quickly by two, HarperCollins in England and United States, and that was a two-book deal. So my second book only had to get through the proposal stage for them to go with
Yeah.
it. And then with the Gifted School, that was a new imprint that also sold on proposal. And there were three or four editors who loved the premise. So
Yeah.
that was a big surprise. That one, and that was really unusual. Um, and I didn't want to try to submit on proposal for culpability. I
Yeah.
wanted to write the whole thing. So yeah, but that's very common actually. In fact, I have a good friend who's a writer who sent a had a full manuscript with an editor who again, she'd gotten a lot of rejections, but has had a full a few months ago with this editor who really liked it, but didn't want to take it to everybody in the imprint without some revision. Like didn't want to champion it without
Yeah.
revision. And I think that's pretty common, where they're like, this is close, but it's not quite there. So here are my notes. And then the author can take those, go back, do a revision over a number of months, and then it comes back. And that could have a happy outcome.
Yeah, that's good. Um, Tara, I see your hand. John has a question, and I have one to read, I think. Um, the easy question, well, Tara, you're preparing to ask Bruce a question. Allison is asking, she
Oh yeah, I
really,
see that question. Yeah, I see
how
Allison's.
long did it take to write it?
Yeah, I would say I drafted it. I came up with a first draft in about 10 months, I want to say, which was for me, that's pretty normal for a draft, but I spend forever revising. I'd say 90% of the actual writing time is revision for me. And so I had that draft, but it was very, very different. It was in third person, multiple points of view. It was kind of all over the place. It was much longer than it ended up being, and I just hadn't quite figured out the story. Then it was really in the second and third drafts that everything came together. I started writing from a single point of view, and then I turned that third person point of view into a first person. And then once I was there, that solved all these other problems. So yeah, I would say a draft in about 10 months, some readers, then a second draft in 3 or 4 months, then a couple more months for a final draft that I went out with to get an agent.
Tara, go ahead with your question, please.
Thanks, Don. And thanks, Bruce, for joining us again. This is wonderful. I have now read Culpability twice. Well, listened
Oh,
to
that's
it
good.
once, but loved it. I can't believe it took you that long to get it picked up because to me, it really did feel like such a well-paced, but also highly topical story that I'm like, how did editors not pick this up right away?
I know.
Um,
Yeah.
I know, it doesn't make any
Well,
sense.
I'll tell you how. They looked at the sales record of my last novel and they saw that it had sold, maybe a couple thousand copies in a few years. And they said, no, thank you.
Yeah.
They saw my
Well, I know
trajectory.
that. I
Yeah.
know that story all too well because I published my first book during the onslaught of the pandemic.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Yeah.
but I was curious. I loved the whole idea in the novel of there's no algorithm for reality, and we might try and
Yeah.
put that into our lives. And I always think about that when I'm writing, and Don and I talk about this too, is there's no right formula, there's no right stage or point where you feel like the book is what it's supposed to be. But you just talked about revision and how you changed your points of view, how you restructured your novel. And to me, like, I'm so curious at what point you felt like now my story has arrived. Now I've got what I think this is meant to be,
Mm.
rather than those first or second or third drafts that you had.
Yes. That's such a great question. It was changing to first person. Like one thing to know is like I'll almost finish a novel and decide I'm not going to keep going. I can't work on this anymore. Or not almost finish. No, even like I've gotten to 70,000 words before and set aside a project because it just wasn't working. So for me, when I finally figured this book out, when I decided not to do that, was when I switched to Noah's first person point of view. Like third person wasn't working. or was working, but I just didn't feel quite there. I had a beta reader say, I'm really feeling that this needs to be in first person. What would happen? I
Okay.
just resisted it because I'd never write in first person. That's just, I've written little fragments of novels in first person, but that's just not my strength, or I didn't think so. And I was self conscious about it. But once I did, it really helped me understand. And if you've read the novel, you'll know that it helped me understand that this novel was Noah telling a story about his,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. It wasn't just about the family accident, AI, whatever. Not that that was those things were incidental, but he was really telling a story about his beloved wife. And that that really, I said, okay, that now I know what I'm doing. And that's when I really started developing her voice in her academic work. And
Right.
those snippets, I wrote so much of that fake book, Silicon Souls. You only see a little bit of it, but
I was so curious if you wrote the whole thing,
yeah.
because yeah.
Oh no, 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 I didn't do that. But I did write I did write a ton of it that didn't go in. Um, Instead, it just had this kind of fragments. And so I think that was the revelation. It was about,
Okay.
and notice that it was 4 or 5 different elements, craft elements. What person I was writing in, what verb tense, because I'd been in third person past.
Yeah.
Um, what point, it was about point of view, eliminating points
Mhm.
of view, focusing on one. Uh, it was about these kind of paratextual elements, interrupting the flow of the narrative. So you have Lorelai's voice in her work.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was like solving one problem will often help solve many. And I'm in the middle of a new novel now, and that is exactly how it's happening, where like it has everything to do with point of view and how many points of view. And yeah, so that's the best I can do.
Okay. No, that's helpful. Thank you.
John Van Sloten from Jacinta, I see your question. Thank you. John Van Sloten and then Jacinta. John from Calgary, go ahead.
Hey Bruce, I was wondering if the whole Oprah thing got in the way for you in terms of your cardinal rule of getting on with writing the next thing. I just heard a guy on the radio this morning who developed the Wordle puzzle, and he talked about the curse side of that, and it just exploded so much it took up way more of his life than he was used to, and all he wanted to
Yeah,
do was keep on writing puzzles. So, was there any of that? And not that anyone's going to complain about that, of course, but.
yeah, yeah. It definitely has. It's and the reason is not because of time. Like I can always find writing time if I'm really busy, and I always will be able to go sit in a coffee shop for 2 hours, sit in a bar at the end of the day, have a glass of wine, and do some writing, even if I'm traveling. That's never been a problem. The issue has been talking about culpability nonstop since July. Like the number of events that I've had and the number still coming about this book. So it's like I'm still inside these characters and I'm still in this novel, in this story. So often I'll be thinking about I'll be writing on my new novel and I'll just start calling this character Noah or, because it's the dad and this one
Yeah.
family that I'm writing about. And it's really, yeah, it is, curse is the wrong word, but it is, what's a better word? Like it's a little bit of a burden, or it's kind of or albatross is maybe a word. It's a good albatross, a very sweet, friendly albatross, but it is there nevertheless, and it's hard to concentrate, not to concentrate, but hard to leave my other story behind because I know I have to prepare a lecture on it for a library event next week.
Jacinta, go ahead with your question, please. It's a good one.
I wrote it in the chat. Thanks for sharing. I just wrote, please, can you describe the rhythm of your writing practice since you've got your academic calendar as well? I'm just curious, what time of day? What are your habits? Do you stick to a schedule?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, thank you for that, Jacinta. I'm a very early riser and I do my best writing in the early morning hours. I usually wake up at 5, not on purpose, but that my younger son woke up at 5 for many years and I was the one who got up with him and it just reset my clock. And so I wake up at 5, I'll make some coffee, read some headlines to get up some outrage, and then I'll start writing. I usually write for about an hour and a half. My goal in that first stint is 500, 750 words, something like that. I am definitely a word counter, but I'm not strict about it. I don't get bummed if I don't do that. Then I go for a long walk, come back, do some more writing, Um, catch up on emails and everything. And again, then yeah, I will find other times to write. Often a coffee shop jag in the middle of the day, I'll crank out 1,000 words. I don't think that's unusual, you know. But I'm not rigid, and it changes during the academic year when I'm teaching.
And we have time for your second question, and I think it's a great way to cap off today's Zoom, Jacinta. So go
Oh
ahead and
yeah,
ask that question.
Sure. Well, thank you for sharing about the rejections, even as a published author. That's really heartening to to some of us.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So what is it that drives you to keep writing if you've got a whole other established career? Um, what keeps you going? Why do you keep writing books?
Yeah, it's um I don't know if any of you are musicians or painters or knitters or I don't know, hobbies that you have that involve creation in some way, gardening. It's just an obsession. I can't imagine my the one answer is I can't imagine life without writing stories. I just love to do it. I don't write short stories, but I do I love writing novels. I love writing long form fiction. And so there's that. There's just the kind of, it's just fun. I enjoy it. I don't suffer for it. Like I don't, the part where I'm just doing the writing and inventing the story is just joy. It's not like my academic writing, which is often felt like pulling teeth at different times in my career. It's a different kind of writing. It's just I get in this, when I get in a flow, I'm just so happy and nothing else can bother me. But the other part of it is it's like a drug. When you get a book accepted, or when you get your ARCs or finished copies in the mail, or you get a beautiful review in Kirkus or something, it's like I remember what that hit is like, and I want to feel it again. So there is something about just the vanity and the pleasure of it. Yeah.
That's so good. I have to tell you, Bruce, it's delightful. I wish we could hang out every week and just catch up over coffee or
Yeah.
aforementioned glass of wine, Chateauneuf du Pape. It would be a perfect.
Yes. Yeah. I'm more of a light red burgundy fan, but I hear you. I want
So
to encourage everybody to please stay in touch with me. I love answering questions, and I put my little Instagram handle on there. I already followed one of you on Instagram who had your Tara, because you have your handle in your thing. So I love staying in touch with people that I've met like this. So please do.
that's so wonderful. And Bruce, before we go, just give us a little update on the work in progress.
Yeah. So it's called The Beta Test, and it's another contemporary family drama. In this case, two families, where the moms slash wives are best friends and have been for many years. They have kids roughly the same age. And I won't tell you the whole thing just because it's kind of a sticky premise, but it involves a crisis between these two families involving kind of online shaming and pornography and so on. And it's about fathers and sons, our so-called masculinity crisis, and it's suspenseful, and it involves this kind of father-son wilderness program in West Virginia. So it's really about men and boys and fathers and sons, but wrapped in the context of this dark family drama. Yeah,
And
and
I'm just going to piggyback on that. What is there pressure from your publisher because of the success of Culpability? Is there the pressure from a publisher to say, "Hey, we need this book out"? Because one of my concerns as a former publisher has always been, "Hey, John Grisham's book has been well received. We need to get another one out this fall."
yeah,
Can you speak to that dilemma?
yeah. I mean, I have a deadline, but because the new one is under contract, but they don't seem too worried about it. I mean, maybe once I'm late, they'll be worried, but they, I'm not feeling a lot of pressure. I'm putting pressure on myself. And I
Mm.
think I'm having all these doubts about it because it's very different than culpability. And I'm thinking, okay, so finally, I write all these books in multiple points of view. Finally, I write one in a single point of view in first person, and look what happens to it. Now I'm going back to multiple points of view. Am I an idiot? Right. So these doubts it's just, you're always going to doubt yourself. And so you just have to trust the story, trust the storytelling. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm also very open to revision. Maybe the whole thing will completely change once I'm done and I'm in a serious revision phase. But I'm not going to think about that for now.
Yeah, yeah. Bruce, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us
you all.
today.
Yeah.
Always good to connect. And thank you, seeing everyone. Laura is doing a shameless promotion. She's reading it.
Oh,
Um,
good. Thank you. Yay.
Sales spiked on your book just this morning, Bruce. So we're excited.
Oh, good. Good. Well, thank you all. It was wonderful to see you again.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see
All right.
you next month on the third Thursday of the month. Thanks, everyone, for
All right.
joining.
Take care. All right. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Bruce.
Bye now.